Okay, guys, check this out. This is about scripture on feasting outside of Jerusalem. Okay?
Tabernacle basically start and enforce God's law and regulate their food and do all the things we've spoken about so far. They were a hospital, the CDC, they ratified contracts, and they did everything that we just discussed for the past 4 episodes. He made a priesthood. It was the Aaronic priesthood that comes from Aaron. The Levitical priesthood comes from Levi, all the rest of the family of Levi. And then there's a high priesthood. So there's really 3. The high priest is kind of a different priesthood, much smaller. So basically there's this guy named Levi who had 3 sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Kohath had Amram, who had Aaron. The Aaronic priesthood is all the descendants of Aaron. The Levitical priesthood are the rest of the tribes of Levi. Just from this, you can tell which group's going to be bigger. It's quite obvious. The Levitical priesthood, the Levites, are going to be a much larger group, much more families to start it.
Right.
And it makes sense because they're spread throughout a bigger area. So this was a dual judicial system. The Aaronic priesthood would be the higher courts. We just call that a federal court system today. The Levitical priesthood are the lower courts. We call it our state courts. We do the same system. We built the exact same system. They're just not Levites.
Right.
And we get stuck on that for some reason. That's why I'm so much a big proponent of the spirit of the law, understanding God's intent behind what he said. And once we narrow that out, some of this stuff becomes okay. Like it's not that big of a deal. So there's the tabernacle. That's just an outline. The high priest served in the Holy of Holies. That was his pretty much primary job. No one else could do it, just him. The Aaronic priesthood served in the holy place, and the Levites served in the outer court. And all of these tiered down. There were, in the New Testament, chief priests. They tiered down from the high priests. And there were Aaronic priests and Levites also. So this tabernacle basically started out with a whole bunch of tents around it, and it's the little city of Jerusalem. Itty bitty city, just tents, not much going on. And they probably did all of their sacrifices and the whole system there. But as they grew, this tabernacle became very, very small. Really small. And there's just no way it could meet the needs of this whole nation as it grew. And God gave us, a way to deal with that. But he told us, what man soever there be of the house of Israel that kills an ox or a lamb and brings it not to the door of the tabernacle shall be cut off. A few verses later, he said the same thing about sacrifices. So he said the word for kill and for sacrifice. But today, we don't feel guilty eating meat. But none of us bring our meat to be offered or sacrificed at a tabernacle.
Right.
But we eat meat. Why is that okay? Why would this not bar us from doing that? It's just because we misunderstand Deuteronomy 12. How would this work? The size of the tabernacle could not accommodate this. It just was not big enough to meet the needs of this entire nation. The likelihood that all vows could be initiated at the central sanctuary is incredibly low. Not only do vows relate to the tithe, but other types of vows and oaths, e.g. for business transactions or legal cases, were a pragmatic necessity.
That's James Douglas Wills.
Yeah, my contacts aren't as good as your
okay.
glasses.
I got new glasses, so we're all good.
But most scholars will tell you there's just no way. And look what he said. For vows and oaths, for business transactions, legal proceedings, everything we've talked about. This is what scholars say. And what I find interesting, scholars will do this brilliant work, and oftentimes when they conclude, they go right to religion. And I'm always wondering why. Why do we do all this nation stuff and then conclude with religion? It just, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's for nations. It's for America to learn how to be a better America.
Right.
And that's really what it's all about. Not for our religious system to get better. So just traveling distances in some cases were impossible. That's why. Those are the 3 main routes to Jerusalem. If you're up there at Asher or Naphtali, it's not going to be an easy trip down to Jerusalem. Just look at the traveling distance. It's over 100 miles at the farthest point. For you can tell America's much bigger than Israel was, at least on this map. One person travel would probably take a week.
Yep.
But if it's a pilgrimage travel to a feast, you're talking entire extended families, camels, carts, tithes, offerings, children. It's not going to be a week.
Right.
Probably 2 weeks. 2 weeks there, 2 weeks back, a week or two festival. That's 6 weeks, 3 times a year. God expects you to commit 18 weeks or more, because people traveled from outside of Jerusalem too. 3 times a year? How are you going to work?
Yeah.
How do you support your family?
That's interesting.
How do you accomplish any of this? And most people would stay from Passover to Pentecost because they were kind of close.
Yeah, why would you go home in between?
Why would you go home
Yeah.
if it took 2 weeks if you got to come back? If you were local, yeah, maybe.
Well, you think about that, 100 miles, and if you travel with camels and all of that stuff, you're going to be going 2-3 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Well, that's, 33 hours
Yeah.
of travel.
People have estimated, and that's why I put up what I said, about a week. One person, maybe a backpacker, just a cart, they had little one-person cart.
Yeah.
You could probably get it in a week. But when you're talking about your whole pilgrimage, bringing your tithes and offering and your whole family, like the Bible describes, it becomes impossible really quick.
Right.
It really, really does. And we need to accept that and just recognize we want to hang on to this only in Jerusalem thing. And that really is kind of worshiping Jerusalem. And I'm not saying Jerusalem's God's city, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But it's the top of a system that he's building for the whole world. In the millennium. Every nation's going to go. How is that possible?
Right. Well, even you look at our, so we bring this to America. Washington, D.C., everyone shall ride a bicycle to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
for 4th of July. How's that going to work?
It ain't going to work. It's just not going to work.
Right.
So God was going to enlarge Israel's borders, and Deuteronomy 12 gives us the answer, and he just straight out says it. He says, take heed to yourself that you forsake not the Levite as long as you live upon the earth. When Jehovah your God shall enlarge your border as he has promised you, and you shall say, I will eat flesh, because your soul longs to eat flesh. You may eat flesh whatsoever your soul lusts after. See that phrase, whatsoever your soul lusts after? That is a tithing phrase. It's only used for the tithing system. That's a very specific phrase. Deuteronomy 14 uses it. Deuteronomy 12, it's a tithing phrase. Whatsoever your soul lusts after is what you can spend your tithe on. Okay? So he's talking about tithing here. Well, obviously, he's talking about going to Jerusalem. If the place which Jehovah your God has chosen to put his name there be too far from you, then you shall kill. That's the word for sacrifice, but it's translated as kill for some reason. Almost the only spot is translated as kill, but it's the word for sacrifice. You shall kill of your herd and of your flock which Jehovah has given you, as I have commanded you. And you shall eat where?
In your gates.
In your gates, whatsoever your soul lusts after.
So this is allowing sacrifice outside of Jerusalem.
We've got to stop thinking just the practicalness of trying to do it in Jerusalem is impossible. And when you see it this way and start placing the pieces, it really fits. But if the gate of the city doesn't tear up to Jerusalem, that's no longer a Jehovah sacrificial system. It's not part of the system anymore.
Right.
That's why they were told to tear down the high places and the altars.
Okay, guys, you can watch this whole thing on A Rude Awakening. Here's the channel. Okay, guys, you can go and watch the whole entire thing there.